I think I've always been a teacher. As long as I could remember, I've enjoyed sharing things I've learned with friends and family. From Legos to cycling and climbing and music and technology, I love discussing these things with others. And having somehow become a habitual sharer and explainer, and now a teacher with a decade of experience in post-secondary ed, I've learned to develop some skills in delivery. However, mastering the dramatic pause during a lecture can only take you so far. I soon realized that if I wanted to forge a real career in education, I needed to put practice and pedagogy behind passion and pursue some higher education goals myself. I began looking at my AR project through the lens of establishing outcomes within collegiate academics. I thought focusing on outcomes seemed like a great first step in curricular review. However, as I dug into the literature, I found that the idea of collegiate outcomes was simply too big and too broad to cover within my project. After talking with both critical friends and family, I realized that regardless of topic, a major concern in post-secondary education is engagement. Reviewing the literature on engagement, I began to find a wealth of exciting papers. One study that stood out in particular was a 2008 paper entitled The Structure of Student Dialogue in Web-Assisted Mathematics Courses by Thomas Lee Naughton Lee. Normally, I'd avoid anything saying mathematics, but this study was so simple and so practical. 3 different courses were designed, wherein one was used as a control, and the successive courses leveraged a greater amount of technical tools and resources in order to see whether or not these new technologies could boost student achievement. Immediately after reading the abstract of this study, I knew I would lay out my entire AR project similar to this one. With 7 years of teaching experience at my current institution, I have student surveys, grade history, and a variety of other data sets possible to establish sort of a baseline or control perspective for my recent performance in the classroom. And as we were learning to leverage so many new technical tools in the EMD class, I decided to then use the following calendar year as an experiment with new technologies and new resources for the classroom. Would students react to new Web 2.0 technologies? Would they appreciate the use of multimedia? Would the use of tools increase overall student success as measured by median and average scores? And what does the rest of the literature suggest regarding the implementation of technology into lecture environments? In Cycle 1, I started working with a critical friend and IPR department head, Eric Trelstad, to review and categorize almost 260 student surveys from my earlier courses. Being familiar with the questions raised within the survey, I knew that this material would prove a valuable starting point for assessing my past educational experience. Overall, I was really amazed with some of the comments I was able to collect from the 2007, 2008, and 2008 through 2009 school years. While I had some positive responses regarding overall delivery and student interest, students commented quite often that I kept class late and sometimes didn't arrive on time. What really struck me is how often these comments about common, everyday classroom conduct were incredibly important. Some students elaborated on the point and suggested that even staying late by 5 minutes can mean parking tickets, missed public transportation schedules, and a host of other complications. This was really eye-opening for me, and I began to understand a much more holistic level how my students' expectations sometimes conflicted with my own. It is not simply enough to foster a dynamic or exciting classroom environment. While these things are important, they must be done within a safe and controlled environment that does not harm the other aspects of a student's life. Students also said I did not follow the syllabus sometimes and they wanted more personal feedback. Again, these concerns, while analog in nature, were important to see and refer to the value of establishing expectations and keeping them. Guidelines and feedback are critical motivators for success as they help students understand where benchmarks will be set. And finally, without even being prompted, quite a few students said, hey, we'd love something hands-on, we'd like to share more media and outside resources for us to use, and please don't use texts, we're a digital generation. Obviously, these students were already looking for greater media resources and opportunities to engage on a more technical level. However, post-Cycle 2, I now realize to some degree that this is easier said than done. Throughout my second cycle, I was able to incorporate quite a few of the technologies that we had all discussed throughout the EMDT program. ScreenFlow, streaming, SlideRocket, iGoogle, RSS feeds, iChat, Twitter, Delicious, WordPress. I implemented them all throughout the winter and spring 2010 quarters. Almost daily, I was bringing new resources into my classroom that I had literally discovered the night before in a WIMBA session. All of these tools ultimately proved valuable, and in many ways, the efforts paid off when I reviewed the most recent surveys. Students immediately had comments that said, websites that Scott used were great, lots of cool web resources, great use of multimedia, great visuals. Clearly, this technology and the resources were impacting my students. But also, they said feedback was useful. This semester, I worked hard to provide timely feedback for class assignments using the idea of rubrics, which was helped and fostered through EMDT. With a slew of new rubrics, I was able to provide more focused and more efficient feedback. I also incorporated the idea of rationales and deliverables with each assignment, just like our FSO model. By pre-framing exactly what was to be expected with an assignment, I found that students would perform to a higher level as their perceptions for the lesson matched my expectations. All things considered, though, despite the clear and obvious positive comments coming back from the added multimedia content, I did not see a measurable or significant increase in overall student scores. But per an element we've discussed this entire year and the research from my literature, I had to remind myself that it is about the implementation and how you do it, not just the inclusion of technology that makes it effective. Simply throwing some new resource into the curricula does not guarantee any direct increase in student achievement. But then, in the middle of my second cycle, a very unique opportunity arose. I had the chance to take a group of 17 students to this year's South by Southwest Music Conference as part of a 4-credit off-campus studies course. I had a lot of trepidation and a variety of conflicting goals. We wanted to maintain academic rigor, a self-learning environment, and wanted to give freedom for our participants to explore their own personal paths while at the conference. Ultimately, I leveraged Twitter, Facebook, and WordPress. Our students had to tweet hourly about where they were and what they were learning. Students had to post status updates to their Facebook pages while also posting to our home school's Facebook page to share with the community. And students had to blog each and every morning and evening a daily plan and daily reflection post on what they had learned and what was most impactful. Furthermore, each student had to comment on other students' reflection pieces as well. All in all, this experience was so rewarding and so gratifying. At any moment of any day, I knew the whereabouts of 17 students and was truly able to connect, challenge, and support each of them even when separated by miles of distance. I think the difference here was the interactive nature of our experience rather than the often one-way perspective of many of the technologies I'd introduced in my second cycle. This trip was nothing short of paradigm shifting. Upon returning to Minnesota, our students left us comments like, "I wish you would fail me so I could take this class again. I came home with 17 best friends after leaving with strangers," and even we had comments that said this course was, quote, life-changing and, quote, affirming. What we've found is that connectedness is valued, and sometimes technology can let us feel that if the technology is interactive. In a 2009 paper, Slagter von Tryon described this phenomenon as e-mediacy. Technology can bring us together, allowing a constant back and forth through the learning process. Furthermore, the media production nature of this course really focused a concentrated synthesis of material as the students created content which expressed all that they were experiencing. In a 2008 paper, Devlin, Farood, and Anderson reiterated this point and explained that it is the active engagement and peer-to-peer interaction that can be facilitated with Web 2.0, and not just the technology itself that contributes to higher student engagement and academic success. Looking back, my own personal growth and learning has been tremendous. When I look at how I structured courses a year ago and how I'm now approaching instruction, the perspectives are worlds apart. In one new class, my students were launching WordPress sites on the second day of class. Furthermore, mirroring Joe Bastillos and other FSO instructors, instead of just having students reference an online database like Delicious, I'm now creating assignments where students are contributing to that site, adding their own new tools and strategies. Again, instead of passively reading, my students are now adding, they're doing. And unlike an opinion paper, teamwork, trust, and self-confidence all come when students are collaborating and working together. While this reality wasn't immediately apparent to me, it became strikingly obvious through the EMDT course progression. Filmmaking, digital animation, song development, and any other manner of media production demands point of view and idea synthesis in order to create media content. Not only that, today it is cheaper and more accessible to leverage these technologies than in any era before. What I've started this year is the beginning of a new perspective of how to approach education and how to interact with my students in the classroom. I've learned to teach at the speed of observation. My class is now a two-way conversation with students, and I'm active and observing in the process, so they are as well. I believe it was Beth Strudgeon was the first person to help me realize the simple yet powerful idea that learning and teaching are two distinct activities. She couldn't be more right. This program has changed my life. Not only that, my perspective is now optimistic. So maybe I've always been a teacher. Well, this year I started learning how to be a teacher and how to acknowledge that the process isn't one-sided. By creating constructivist activities, wherein students are challenged to create their own media content, I am able to really put student aptitude to the test, not just student memorization. Through action research, and with the support of this tremendous team of faculty and classmates, I finally have some ideas as how to do just that from now on. Thank you.